Hello, Self Smarter listeners. It's me, Megan. Thank you for being here. We hope you're having a wonderful holiday and a laborless one at that. And we hope you're emotionally shaping up for a strong week ahead. Today for our podcast, we wanted to elevate one of our most listened to pods where Danelle really got vulnerable and talks about her journey as an overwhelmed leader. This particular episode was recorded about a year ago, and so for me, it just serves as a good reminder that, listen, we're all human. We aren't here to live perfect lives, and we aren't here to pretend that we're living perfect lives. And sometimes these truths come to the surface at the strangest times. And for Danelle, that's why we recorded this podcast. We recorded it because we were so convicted in leading by example and sharing with you that the imperfection of life is as important, if not more, than sharing what's actually going well. In this episode, Danelle talks about what wasn't going well and it all piling up, all these events that happened to her and brought her to a very low point. And at the same time, she woke up and our life has been transformed, and so has our podcast. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being your imperfect self. Without further ado, here is episode 78, The Journey of Armor, Agility, and Acceptance.
Hi, we're Danelle and Megan, the hosts of this conversation-centric podcast for leaders seeking to be better every day. Whether you choose to be a leader in the workplace, at home, or in your community, we believe the most effective leaders are equipped to not only be self-starters, but self-smarter.
Hello, and welcome to Self Smarter. I'm Megan, and this is my co-host, Danelle.
Hello, everyone.
So, something is very different today, like significantly different today.
I mean, I guess if you consider being in New York City in a recording studio in Times Square, maybe.
That's just a little different. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. My 9-year-old inside self is freaking out. She's freaking out. This was her dream. She wanted to be a DJ or a newscaster or a broadcaster of something of that sort. And turns out we can do that in marketing and leadership.
We can. So I'm glad you're getting to fulfill that dream.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's all because of you. And your big idea, which we talked about.
We did.
Last week, just recently, Danelle and I are coming off of a really high week. Not high in the way that you guys think it is, because shame on you. Shame on you. But high in terms of self-smarter high.
Yes. Very.
So when you're living in self-awareness and then you're invited to come speak to people, in this instance, it was 200 women.
Yes.
In Nashville, we have been talking a lot about dreams and about who we've become and where we're going. And so we are going to talk a little bit about Danelle, that is, and where she's going and what she's doing and why we're in New York City.
Yeah.
But really what we wanted to say at the top was how grateful we were.
Yeah, absolutely. The event, like Meg said, well, first of all, it was in Nashville.
Yes.
It was on a showboat.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest stages we've ever been on.
So big.
And we were invited because of
this
podcast. And so, I mean, we're known in the industry that we serve, and usually we're talking about marketing or leadership. But in this instance, we were invited because of the work that we're doing on this podcast, which, again, that in itself was incredible. Mm-hmm. But to be on the stage, Nashville, and on a showboat, you talk about 9-year-old dreams come true.
9-year-old Danelle was on a stage.
So yeah, within a week, both of us have realized something really incredible in our journeys. So yeah, so grateful. The Association Southeast Produce Council and the group of women from Southern Roots who had us come speak, we are very, very grateful, and just still almost a week later having just tremendous feedback.
Just on cloud nine too.
Yeah, still on cloud nine, and just a lot of folks really grateful for the time that we all shared together. So it was extra special, and we talked primarily about the Enneagram and really diving into that, which, we talk about pretty much every episode on here. But it was neat to do that with 200 women, and we learned as much as we shared, and that was what was really special part of it. Mm-hmm. So.
We also had a really funny thing happen, and I want to share it. I do want to share it, but I'm going to share it right after this commercial. Well, we've been teasing you for weeks now about what's new and what we've been working on for you, pod listeners. And today I have an update. We've created new tools and coaching opportunities to help you on your leadership journey. If self-improvement is what you're looking for, we can help with that. If team coaching is something you're looking for, hey, we can help with that too. It's all available to you at beselfsmarter.com. And the best news is we're still working on more. We know how big the need for leadership development tools can be for anyone starting or those of you who have been leading for a long time and just want to hone your skills. Danelle and I would be so happy to work with you. Visit beselfsmarter.com and take a look. So now that we've gotten that sweet commercial out of the way, I want to tell a couple of funny things. Well, are they funny? I don't know. You decide.
Yeah.
They were different. So Danelle and I are standing on the side of this gigantic stage. So I want to set the tone for what we faced. Mm-hmm. Danelle mentioned we were on a boat. It was called the General Jackson, and it's at Opryland in Nashville. So, I mean, like a big boat.
Like 4-story boat.
Yeah, like big. Okay, it looks like an old Southern sort of fun boat.
I don't know. It's like,
what do they call it? A steamboat? Something like that.
Something like
with
that.
With the paddle on the back, like that rotating thing. Okay, so like that.
Awesome. All the marine type people, boat people.
They're like, oh my word. Yeah.
Those girls need a lesson or
right.
two. Yeah.
Well, Danelle walks into this boat and sees I don't even know how tall it was. 5 feet tall?
Oh, yeah. If we would have fallen, we would have hurt ourselves.
Yeah.
It's a big stage.
We would have broken a leg or a limb of some kind if we would have fallen off the stage.
But what you don't know is I just assumed we were going to be presenting in front of the stage.
So did I.
Oh, I know you did.
Oh.
But the minute I was there before Meg was, and the minute they said, oh, no, you're going to be on stage, like all of me just gets so excited. And then a couple of the folks that were with us were like, uh-oh. And I knew in their hearts they were really freaking out for you.
Yeah, because I don't like... In growth, I like being on a stage and performing.
Presenting, yeah.
Yes, but just being Megan, no ma'am. I don't want to be on a stage. So while Danelle is living her best life, like standing on the stage, and she's got like her arms out, and I'm just walking in, and she's like feeling the air and the breeze on this big stage, and I'm like, feels like someone just kicked me in the stomach, like, huh. And one of the ladies who was on the committee who invited us, actually, she walked right up to me and she goes, are you okay? Are you going to be okay? I was like, I don't know. I really don't. I guess we're going to get through it and see how it goes. But it went well. It went really, really well. Yeah, and I felt the love in the room and the energy around us. Absolutely. So that's funny story number one, because you have to tell that story, because the second one is just weird. So Danelle and I go back to the green room, get all ready, and put on our faces, and we're ready to get on the stage, this big, ginormous stage. And we're standing on the side, and I'm standing in front of Danelle, and they're about to announce us. And I look up. There's like a staircase that goes right up in front. And what was at the top of that staircase, Danelle, staring down at us?
It was a bird, a little angel bird.
A little bird. It was like just staring right down at us. And I thought, don't you move.
Don't you move, bird.
You're going to be fine. We're going to be fine if you don't move. Okay. And this bird didn't do anything. It just sat there and stared at us.
I think it was wishing us well. It felt like it.
I felt like that too.
Until.
And in case you're wondering, people who are afraid of birds, it wasn't a big black bird. It wasn't even a small black bird. It was one of those sweet, kind of chubby looking brown birds.
Yeah, those.
Sweet face. Mm-hmm. Sweet little face, like, oh, yay for you. You're going to get up on that stage. Go, girl, go, kind of thing.
Our little mascot.
Yeah, our mascot. So we get up on a stage, and I think I spoke, I don't know, a few minutes, whatever.
And you did a wonderful opening. I was so proud of you.
Oh,
just FYI.
Thank you.
I want to throw that out there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Because I know that the stage is not your jam, but no one would have ever known it. And you were very vulnerable, and you said some really cool things about how you were actually feeling. You were very self-smarter in that opening. And I just want to acknowledge that to all of our listeners, how proud I am of you.
Well, evidently my energy was soaring up into the area where the bird was, because when you started to speak, here comes this bird, y'all. I'm talking about diving.
Right, towards my hairspray coif. And I mean, it stopped me in mid gratitude, because I had spoken at this event 4 years ago, so I was referencing how vulnerable I had felt because I had just dropped Mackie Payton off at NYU, and I was feeling vulnerable then. I'm feeling vulnerable now for different reasons, and I'm sharing my heart with these 200 people on this stage,
Yes,
next to my best friend and co-host. And here comes the bird, and I see it, and I'm thinking to myself, gosh, what's about to happen?
Yeah.
And I just had to acknowledge it, and I just had to say, did y'all just see that bird? Because it swooped so close to my head.
Yeah, and
it probably didn't, but in my imagination,
I
it
saw
felt
it.
like it was. I could hear those wings a-flapping.
The bird definitely came down over the stage, and y'all were in front of 200 people.
Looking our best, like we were ready. We were ready to go.
So ready.
I mean, that bird threw a little wrench in things, but what it did do, a little angel, was it made us relax a little bit.
It did.
We were more human up there in that moment because everyone did see the bird, and I think everyone was probably gasping.
They were.
Like nervous for us with the swooping bird, and I was nervous because there's food on the table, but that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, same. I was like, oh no, flying birds in here. That's not good.
Not good.
But what it did was it allowed us for a little humility.
It did.
Because here we are, big britches, up on this stage. Who do we think we are? That bird took us both down a notch to say, listen, don't forget why you're here.
Right.
You're just as human as everybody else. I mean, not that we didn't feel that way.
No.
But it just lightened the mood.
It did. It was we were asking for our nerves backstage.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can go out there and just be ourselves and share and get people to open up, because that was how we designed this particular session. Was we wanted it to be us teeing up the conversation, but what we were really looking for was that special dialogue and trust that can only come from 200 people in a room. So it ended up being a very interesting way to kick off the session, but one that people keep talking about.
Yeah. They're like, and that bird.
And that bird.
So the minute that bird took flight, Danelle, I knew we were both kind of like freaked out by it, but we lovingly called it our angel because it flipped the script mentally. It helped the audience come along with us instead of feel sorry for us. It helped the audience
not feel sorry for us,
or just
but
like,
how when
no.
somebody's up there speaking,
Well, of course.
you feel empathy for them. You
Right.
think, wow, I bet they're nervous.
That's a bummer.
Right. And I think we were able to take our nervous energy and turn it into the type of energy that everyone needed in the room so that they could fully embrace the conversation and the discussion that we ended up being able to lead them through. So it was not what I had hoped for, but in a way, it was exactly what we needed.
Yeah. And I wish I could say to all of you, our listeners, and you, Danelle, that bird only hit us once, but actually it hit us multiple times throughout our 2 hours
Yes.
on that stage.
Well, it didn't literally hit us, but it visited
Swooped.
us. I mean, it was there.
And then it was chirping. It was real upset.
It was chirping at one point. I think it wanted its place up there.
Maybe there was a nest. I get it if there was a nest.
Okay. Yeah,
I get
think
it.
about
It was
that.
protection. Yeah.
All right. Enough bird talk.
Enough bird talk. We moved beyond the bird. We had a great time. So anybody who was there, who was listening, I know we have a lot of new excited listeners joining us because of that session. And I know they've started with some Enneagram content and they're moving on to now today and what we're talking about here. And that really is truth about armor, agility, and acceptance. And why those things came up was because they were peppered throughout our presentation purposefully. I don't know. They kind of kept coming up when we were
There was
talking.
no slide on any of those.
No. But the words kept coming up. We were doing that. We had let down the armor. We were being very agile in a very interesting situation. Not
Yes.
a bad one.
No.
Just
Different.
kind of, whoa, okay. And then we accepted the truth and then we kept going. And that is what Danelle was telling people that they had to do relative to their self-discovery journey.
Correct.
So the presentation was rooted in that. And so in that line of thinking, Danelle, I thought, we're going to talk a little bit about, you were asked, what are you going to do? Like, what does life look like going forward for you? And I am here to say today that Danelle is starting a new residency in New York City, kind of like the Elvis residency in the 70s back in the day at the casinos. Kind of like that. So she's
Like
doing
the Elton John at Caesars.
Yeah, that's more
Yes.
relevant. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. I heard There's lots of new residencies taking place now in Las Vegas.
A big deal.
And in here.
But I will give credit where credit is due. So when we arrived in New York, Mackie Payton, my daughter, who, if you've listened to the previous episode, highly encourage you to listen. But as many of you know, our daughter lives here, and she was like, Mom, Harry Styles just finished a 15-day residency at Madison Square. And she's like, I started thinking Mom's residency starts this weekend. So that's what we're lovingly calling this extended stay of mine in New York is my residency, which makes me another childhood dream.
Yeah.
I'm coming right off a showboat, moving into my New York residency. I mean, it is Nashville to New York. I mean, it couldn't be getting
a big deal.
It's all just, it's hitting.
And during the presentation, I kind of put you on the spot, which I can tend to do sometimes.
Yeah.
And I do it when I think that you're capable and ready to handle it. Obviously, I wouldn't have asked you this question a month ago, not even 2 weeks ago, but today, and now here we sit in New York City.
Yeah.
Talk to us. I'd love for you to share, because I asked you on the stage in Nashville. Sorry, I'm kind of all over the place. I asked you on the stage in Nashville to talk a little bit about your path over the last few months, because it's been different.
Yes.
And I think it has led you to this moment where we are now starting your residency in New York.
Yes.
And so I'd love for you to talk about that, because it does relate back to armor, agility, and acceptance.
Yes. And for those of you who've been listening to the podcast, if you listened to episode 1, you know why we started this podcast. Right. And that was part of how we teed up this session. And so sharing that with the audience was important. And for those of you who've been listening to the podcast, you know that this podcast was started out of, my leadership journey, and which started with, I've been on a leadership journey, my entire career, but the reality is when I received a 26% approval rating 8 years ago, I started to realize all the things that I needed to work on. And I don't know, for as long as I can remember, I've been a self-starter. So this podcast is self-smarter, because honestly, that's what I was lacking. And was I not successful? No, I've been successful. The company was successful, and all the metrics that one needs to say, is this business relevant? Is this business thriving? We were getting A's and high marks in all of those areas. So for someone who's sitting in the seat of owner and CEO, one can assume things are going great, but we knew something was not exactly right in our culture. And we had other internal markers that not a lot of people knew about. We had some attrition issues, we had attitude issues, we had entitlement issues. And that stuff is not always easy to see, because it's not like you show up to a client meeting or to a trade show with those things on display.
Issues.
Yeah, no, you don't. You don't.
Right.
You don't. So, and again, for those of you who know, but basically this journey started with an evaluation. I asked for a consultant to come in and give me, as a leader, an evaluation, assuming I was going to have things to work on. But what I didn't assume and what I didn't see coming was a 26% approval rating as the leader of this organization. And to me, and that was completely unacceptable.
Right.
And so as the story goes, I put down the business books, and I started to pick up, the self-awareness books and the self-learning, and I wanted to become a better communicator, because I didn't get poor scores in all areas. I mean, the team trusted me.
Sure.
They knew I was a capable leader.
Yes.
But was I a good communicator? No, not the best. And I certainly had work to do in other areas. And so that was the genesis of this podcast, or this 8-year path we've been on, and we decided to start sharing all of that knowledge and learning with Self Smarter. So what ended up taking shape for me personally, because we've never stopped studying. I mean, we're on this journey.
Right.
This journey didn't start and stop and then boom, we started a podcast. Not at all. Well, it was the opposite, matter of fact. And so, meaning we feel like sometimes we feel like even though it's 8 years in, and we don't want your journey to be as bumpy as ours has been, which is why we're sharing and being so open each and every week with you, is that we are hoping to impart what we've learned and what we're still learning. So some of our episodes are reflective, but a lot of our episodes are, hey, we're diving into this subject and we want you to come along with us. So that's a little bit of background. If I know we have some new listeners. And so the question, and you know, I'm not surprised by your zingers. You know,
I know.
on the spot things you like to do, but usually they can be in the alignment of humor.
I know. Sometimes.
But
this time it wasn't.
No, it was not. And I knew you wouldn't put me in any kind of position to not be prepared to share. Mm-hmm. But what I needed to share or what you asked me to share, I don't know that there was ever a time to be ready.
No.
And so I just decided to go ahead and answer the question in full truth. And I'm glad that I did. It wasn't the easiest thing in the world to do. And it's not going to be easy for me to repeat it here on this podcast. But the response that I've gotten from being completely transparent and being very open, I think has been helpful to others who maybe have been on a similar journey or maybe didn't feel like they could or worried that they may find themselves in this particular position and maybe they should do some things to avoid it.
People think that they're alone. Mm-hmm. I think people think that they're alone, that no one else is going through what they're going through. We've kind of pulled that out of the audience at the event in Nashville. Mm-hmm. People don't realize that there are other people that feel the same way. Everyone's journey is different.
Yes.
But we can all have pain.
Right.
And we can all have really tough times in our lives when we might need help beyond ourselves. And so I think people feel very isolated. I think that's probably a better word. So what you do is you give permission when you're honest.
Mm-hmm. And it's not that, this is not about honest or dishonest. This is just about how much do you want to share. This is about, right. I mean, there's a difference.
That's right. Yeah.
And there's nothing that we've talked on this podcast that where we've changed the truth. But what we've talked about relative to my journey, we've talked about my transitions multiple times. We've talked about the fact that I have been in therapy, and what Meg asked me to do for this audience and what she's asking me to do today is to kind of put the story and the timeline together and to kind of open up about that. And so we began the year. I mean, Meg and I have been working, so let me just there's certain things that have kind of almost stacked in my life that put me into the position that I was in to need to ask for help. But basically, succession of this business, something we've been working on I've been working on it for about 2 years, and it's been in my, purview since then. Meg and I actively working on it about a year, and then we made the transition actually at the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. And so Meg began running the company on a day-to-day basis, and then we announced that to the industry in March. Mm-hmm. And what was interesting about that was we announced it right before a trade show, and inevitably what happens on the trade show floor. It was big news. We're a well-known company in the space that we serve. And I mean, I couldn't walk a foot and someone was stopping and going, oh my gosh, like, congratulations. I mean, people are very nice, they want us to win, which is fantastic. But the question kept coming up over and over of what are you going to do next? And I hadn't fully realized that was a big miss in the succession planning. We got everything right. I felt really so great about how prepared you and the leadership team was and were, and how accepting our clients were and of the news. But I failed to think about what was next for me. I just didn't calculate how that when you actually took the reins of the day-to-day, how much time that was going to leave me with. However, we announced this at the beginning of March. I was leaving a week later for 3 weeks in Paris and then Germany. And so I just was like, I'm going to go travel around. And people genuinely were happy about that with me. And I was too. But something, every time I would answer the question, it started to chip away at me. And I could just start to feel this undercurrent of emotion that was not healthy. But in the true 7 Enneagram style, I just kept planning through it. And it's funny because that's one of the things we talked about in this session is all the Enneagram types. And oh, by the way, we're going to put the presentation that has so much rich content in it about the Enneagram types. But one of the things that the 7 struggles with is one of our fixations, which means where our ego goes when it's in trouble. The interesting thing about the 7 is we go into planning mode. We will get through anything with two major pieces of armor: denial and planning.
Like, what's next?
What's next?
Yeah.
You can't even enjoy what was there. I couldn't sit in that moment at that trade show and accept all of that, like just celebration of the hard work of a 25-year career, more than that, 27-year career, plus the business was 18 years old. I couldn't even sit in that because I couldn't allow myself to feel that emotion because I really was questioning, what in the hell are you going to do next? And so there's I guess level one of what was going on in my life. The other thing, and again, I knew these things were coming. I planned for them. The next thing that was coming up is I turned 50 in March. So there's a whole episode on the podcast where we talk about that, or the team surprised me with a very sweet podcast. And turning 50, great shape. I've worked hard to get my health back in order. I had struggled there for a while, and, starting around 47. And those things I was feeling good. I was feeling good about turning 50. And it was doing it in Paris, so that didn't suck. And was moving on. So I knew that was coming, no surprise. And then shortly thereafter, I knew my daughter was graduating from NYU.
As planned?
As planned. Yeah, she was right on time. And so, but what I didn't realize was all the other emotions around turning 50. As you start to really reflect forwards and backwards. And I started to kind of feel, I don't know, just a little bit depleted. Not physically, which I'd focused all my efforts on, but emotionally. So then Mackie Payton graduates. I mean, how prouder could her dad and I be? She's graduating NYU in one of the toughest musical theater programs in the country.
On the dean's list.
I mean, just all the
accolades.
Listen to her podcast where she's a guest, and you'll know what I'm talking about. And I just was filled with pride, but I did not allow myself to feel any other emotion except for pride and just, gratefulness and love for her. And the reality is Mackie was graduating and to pursue a career that is extremely difficult. What Mackie wants to do, which is to be, an actor on live stage, is not the easiest, of course, especially when colleagues and friends, their kids are graduating high school and college, and they're getting jobs. And Mackie's path just looks different. So for me, it was just a mindset that I wasn't prepared necessarily for. And I hadn't thought about what were my emotions going to be. It's not that I wasn't there to support her or her dad, but for me, it was again another identity shift. So now we're 3 identity shifts in, and it's barely Q2 of 2022. The succession, 50, and then, our daughter graduating. And then Mackie and I literally left New York and we went to Italy. She studied abroad. It was a delayed study abroad program. COVID canceled it 2 years in a row. So NYU allowed her to walk and then to go study abroad. I spent some time with her in Florence getting things squared away. And then I disappeared into Tuscany. And a lot of people don't know that. I wasn't public about it. I didn't put anything on social media. And I went and spent time in Tuscany and just alone for a week. And I'd never done that ever in my life. And I thought that would be the time, and it was in so many ways, a time for me to reflect, a time for me to really figure out what the next chapters looked like.
Right.
And there were so many different things that happened during that particular week. But what I found was I think it was day 3 or 4, I was alone in Tuscany in these hills, and I was riding a bike, and I rode up to the tallest point in Chianti, the area where I was staying. And by the way, I said I rode up a bike. There was an electric bike, believe me, because my ass couldn't have got halfway up that hill. Anyway, so I found myself on just this extreme emotional high. I mean, I've sent you videos about it. I had not felt that free. It was a freedom feeling. It was a high like I hadn't experienced. I was alone, which was not something I do much of in any form or fashion. I'm looking at one of the most beautiful places on earth. It was a symbolism of accomplishment. It symbolized freedom. It symbolized a new chapter. It symbolized all these things that I was in a quest for. And I left the area, found myself in Rome with a whole itinerary of what I was going to do for the 1.5, 2 days I was in Rome. And I found myself paralyzed in the bed, in a hotel room, unable to barely function. And I could not reconcile the emotional
disparity.
The disparity.
Yeah.
That had never happened to me in that fashion at this particular stage of my life. And so it scared me. And unfortunately, I didn't lean right away into the fear aspect of it. I kind of sat with the shame of it all. And I felt shame because I'm thinking, you are living and have earned this incredibly charmed life. Why can't you? What's happening?
Like enjoy it.
Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like, what is happening? And that's when I knew it was about the 10th red flag in a matter of a few months of things that just kept happening that were a little bit out of my control, and meaning relative to my emotions. And my typical fixes were not working because everybody gets down. Everybody has a lull moment. You have a huge change in your life, or a chapter opens or closes, and it just chapter after chapter kept closing for me. And I was
just
not
on top
able
of one another.
No, and they were all, but they weren't bad things.
No.
You know, I think people can
But
find
still,
themselves in a depressive
change.
state around something traumatic or something very sad. That wasn't what was happening for me, except for the final, I think the final wake up call. Let's just call it that. Is I'd been gone for 2.5 weeks when I came back from Italy, and I came back to find out or to see the physical toll that had happened to our family. We've talked about Shelby Ray passing on a previous podcast, but I came back and I could see her significant weight loss, and we immediately went to go find new vets, and it was clear she was not well. And then within a week and a half, we received the diagnosis that she was terminal, and you know, she passed within a month of me being back from Italy. So I didn't wait until her passing to get help. I immediately made the decision that I needed to take drastic measures before then, but then to come back to that, I knew the spiraling was not going to stop. And that's the only way I know how to describe it, is I just had it emotionally entered a depressive state. And it's interesting because you think you know what depression or that type of emotional state can feel like, because maybe we've seen it played out in, you know, movies or television, or maybe you know someone in your life that has had a version of that, and for me, it didn't look like anything I'd seen before. Okay, so that's the important part of what I want to share, is I had no ability to identify it. And so it took these moments of just me being shaken.
Yeah.
And I finally had enough, I don't know, desperation in me to truly seek help. And that's what I did. And I think this was early to mid-June when I knew I needed to do something different. And that's what I did. And I'm so grateful to have not allowed the pain and suffering, not that it didn't continue, it did. And I'm not going to say that it's completely gone, but I'm glad I made the move when I did, because it was not headed anywhere healthy. So,
and then
obviously you watch the whole thing.
Yes. And I mean, I'm sure people who are listening to you speak are putting the timeline together, and they're like, wait a minute, you guys launched the podcast in February. And now here we are. I mean, we're 34 episodes in, and every episode, what you guys have been witnessing is progression of processing all of this. She and I being very aware of it, and reading Atlas of the Heart.
Yes.
bringing it
with our team.
With our team.
Yeah.
Yes, in tow. And they knew.
Mm-hmm.
They knew.
Mm-hmm.
All these self sort of development tools, books, things that we've been sharing with you, we've truly been gobbling them up ourselves because Danelle's been sort of leading this journey. I don't want to say you've been on it alone.
No, not at all.
You know, you've been leading this journey and showing us what, life is going to have twists and turns
Right.
along with it, and how we navigate those twists and turns. We can either do it alone or we can do it with people, which you invited us all to be along that with you. Mm-hmm. And then it's, okay, what kind of tools do we need in order to get down the path?
Right.
And that's what we've been doing on this podcast. So even though you are talking about it now, and even though you just spoke about it in Nashville, and quite frankly, last week you also shared it with the team. I asked you to do that too. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you're like, enough with you. Stop asking me. But no, this is because this is the journey we've been on. Right.
And I think too, most of my self-awareness and the work I've done on myself has been under the lens of leadership and motherhood.
Yes. Okay.
And where this started to become, it became very obvious that I had some personal work to do for a lot of reasons, but namely these things that I just shared with you on this podcast. Those were significant changes in my life, and those were, some professional changes, but it really wasn't about Danelle the leader. It was Danelle the person.
Yeah, Danelle was armored with pride.
Yeah, oh yeah, armored with it, and also armored with, I had accepted the language of I wasn't the best leader. Like I'm now accustomed. I'm accustomed to talking about that now.
Yes.
And then to openly talk about how I was struggling in this chapter of my personal life, I wasn't ready for that. And I remained armored up. And so, yes,
and is that shame? Armored of shame?
Yeah.
Question marks?
Always.
Like, I don't know what this is.
Yes. Yeah. It's a lot of different emotions, and just to also let everyone know, we talk about therapy. I think we've mentioned my therapist, but I made also a decision that I wasn't going to just do therapy a couple of times a month.
Right.
Like, I'm a 7.
Don't go lightly.
We don't go
lightly.
Holly,
don't go lightly.
Once we decide not to deny something, we are in it. So I made the decision. I had a friend who was diagnosed, unfortunately, with MS 8 years ago. And I may not get these years exactly right, but I know that part of her recovery, and you're not fully recovered from MS, but to get to remission, and that's how she refers to it, is that she worked with a neuropsychologist because her MS was triggered by extreme stress. And this neuropsychologist literally helped her rewire her brain, and to the point to where she's on 0 medications for multiple sclerosis because of this mind work. And I remembered that. And so in my moment of, I need help, I call my friend, and she's like, yeah, I don't know that she's taking new patients, but she's here in Houston, so I don't know what you want to do about that. And so she interviewed me and decided to take me on as a new patient, which I know she made an exception for me, and thankfully she did. And she confided in me months and months later that she made that decision because she knew that I would get to a point where I would share this story and it might help someone else. So that's also filled my confidence tank to talk about something that isn't the sexiest thing on the planet in terms of my journey. So working with a neuropsychologist is she's working on helping me understand how our emotions impact our minds and our minds impact our emotions. And she's literally teaching me how the brain works. And so I'm like I joked with the session, but it's not a joke, as I have this woman on retainer. I'm in sessions 4 to 5 hours a week. And part of that is because I'm so fascinated by the science. And I love the intellectual aspect of the therapy. And I've been to therapy before, so I'm not new to therapy, but this type of therapy was
Different.
It's very different, and it's absolutely what I needed, because I do care about my overall health. I care deeply, and I think we need to talk more about mental wellness. And I've been on such a physical journey around wellness that I was, and again, I've been on a healthy journey around my emotions as it relates and the way I behave around leadership, and certainly my relationship with my daughter, but on a personal level, and honestly, the relationship with myself. And that's really what got me into this state. And I don't want to talk about it like it's a negative state, even though, yeah, depression's not a fun word to throw around. And but it's also a badge that I think I have to accept and wear. Otherwise, it's just something that I can push aside and not openly accept about myself. And the work that she and I are doing now in our 4th or 5th month together is really work around self-compassion, because one of my goals in life, in these next chapters of my life, is to practice more compassion. And you can't be compassionate with or for others. You cannot possess that without extreme self-compassion.
Right.
And it's, loving ourselves requires us to love all the parts. And that's what we shared in that session. And I think it spoke to a lot of people, is we have to share the light, the dark, the shadows, all of it, in order to truly belong to ourselves. And therefore, when we belong to ourselves, we can be there for others. And so that's really where this journey is for me now, is about self-acceptance of the things that are really, really great about me and how I'm individually wired, but also the things that need work.
Right.
Need work, and that need to be repaired.
Right.
And rewired. And I won't go off on my neuroscience because I'm a novice, and probably will remain in that status. But the things I've learned about our mind is just fascinating. And I think we think of emotions as being more heart-centric, when really it's our minds that drive a lot of that. So it's a fascinating journey that I have no intention of pausing anytime soon. I would like for, we lovingly call Meg now as on a first name basis with my doctor, but we would love to have her on here, but there's something patient doctor, I don't know, some rule or something that says she can't yet. But when you do see her on here, that means on here, or hear that she's on one of our episodes, it means I've graduated therapy for the time being.
That's right. Anyway. That's right.
Thank you. I mean, again, I hope this has been helpful to our listeners, and I want everyone to know that I'm excited about this new chapter, and in terms of leaning into what I'm, what maybe comes easy, but more importantly, the challenges. And I'm in a much stronger place to meet those. So,
what about so? During the session, when we finally got off the stage, we walked down and we let people ask questions. The first question that was asked was, Danelle, what are you going to do next? And then we ran out of time,
right,
and you were unable to answer that question. So I would love for you to answer that question.
Okay.
What are you going to do next? What's up with the residency in New York City? What's going on?
Well, I'm sure you piece it together. Obviously, our daughter lives here, and she's beginning a career here. And so I'll circle back to that in a minute. But my first priority in terms of next chapter, in terms of the work I'm going to do, is the president of our company has asked me here to New York on special project to continue to grow our restaurant PR, public relations, and social media business. So we've been working on growing this aspect of our business for, actively for 2 years. We hired Lauren, our director of public relations, actually from New York.
Yeah.
And she was working exclusively in the restaurant PR business. And so she's been with DMA and learning the fresh produce industry and just doing an incredible job, and the opportunity for us to expand, again, for about a year and a half, 2 years into the restaurant business. And we're doing that very selectively. And so that's a big part of why I'm here in New York. And then also I have a passion. I've been working with a nonprofit called Broadway Inspirational Voices, and became friends with the founder. He founded this incredible nonprofit 20 something years ago. I want to say 28 or 29 years ago. And it is essentially these incredible, talented voices here performing on Broadway and other live theater. They use those talents to bring joy and healing to people in need. So think Ronald McDonald houses across the United States. And in fact, they're on multiple continents. This work is being done. And I just fell in love with the nonprofit. And when Mackie came here to NYU, I learned about it. And we've been donors and just supporters of the nonprofit. And then once I started to transition everything to you in terms of day-to-day, I was asked to come in and start to work with the board and with the executive team in a number of capacities. So that's another reason why I'm here. So that is something I've been called to do for a while, and in typical fashion, I said I'll just continue to be a donor and kind of but table. That's the word.
Yeah.
Is table, working with them more closely, mainly due to time commitments. And so now's the right time for that. And then not lastly, but the other big thing, and this has been on something that's been in my purview for about 4 years now, but have connections and family that are in the I'm just going to loosely call it the creative digital realm. And they are working as the dean at SCAD University, so Savannah College of Art and Design. Our aunt is currently the dean there, and then her partner is head of all virtual reality there. So their names are Max and Terry, and you'll probably hear me refer to them quite often going forward because they're going to be my new business partners. But they've been actively working on research around how immersive technology, and so think of the metaverse. I mean, I know you're starting to hear about it more and more every day, but virtual reality, augmented reality, how it can be used in medical realms. So there's 3 areas we're going to focus on. So the first area is hospice care. And what they have learned is that at the end of life, the person who's experiencing or needing the hospice care, the number one thing that they ask for is a spiritual experience. So that could be any number of things. That could be a spiritual experience of traveling to some part of the world that they never got to go to. A lot of people want to go do the walk in Jerusalem, and I forget lovingly what that's called, but there's so many different parts of just imagine of the world that could bring you a spiritual experience. And so that's up there. Or think of a gospel choir, and working with Broadway Inspirational Voices, I totally understand that. And so we're going to bring content to those particular people, not only the people that are needing hospice, but their caregivers. And so this will be used as a tool to bring them peace and to provide them with an experience at the latter stages of their life that can fill their heart. And so then the other area that we're going to focus on is palliative care. So think of chronic pain, people that are dealing with serious, again, extreme pain, when your mind is completely immersed. So imagine if you're playing a game in an immersive reality experience, you can literally be worked on. So think of a suture or a surgery, not a super invasive surgery, but a minimal, like a surgery where you would need a general or a small anesthesia. If you're completely immersed, then your mind can't, it's called the gate theory. You can Google it. your mind cannot process those two things at once.
At the same time.
Yeah. And
that's why
believe
people
me,
can't multitask, really.
Exactly. And so if you think about a soldier coming home with a burn wound
Yeah.
that needs constant care to deal with that 3rd degree burn, or a child or anybody with a 3rd degree burn, this can be a way to help reduce the pain and the meds that are needed to care for that wound.
Right.
And so it's just fascinating. And I mean, we're barely scratched. When I say we, it's the surface is barely being scratched relative to this particular area. This is very on the front end of what's possible. And then the other area that we're going to focus on is dementia and Alzheimer's. So they have study after study that shows when people are in these when you're suffering from dementia and you can go somewhere into an alternative environment or go back to a place that brings you joy. Or one of my favorite examples is a woman who was classic piano, like she was trained on piano, but I don't even know if she knew what her piano is anymore. Like, I don't even know if she knows what it is. But when she's immersed in virtual reality in a Mozart, and Mozart is playing and she can feel it in here, she has gotten up and walked over to her piano and just started playing without anything.
Wow.
Like, that's, and it's a loose example, but it is just fascinating. And so we are going to work together. The company is called Magica XR. We are going to build this company to create content to bring just peace, again, not only to the patients, but to the caregivers. So if you can imagine, if you're taking care of someone with dementia or Alzheimer's, and you're able to put them in a peaceful place, even just for 30 minutes while you get dinner ready or do a load of laundry or whatever it may be to care for them, that is going to just be so helpful to them.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I know it sounds like a lot. You're like, oh goodness, she's getting herself into a lot of different things. But the reality is these are selected areas of work that I want to do. And it goes without saying that it's going to be nice to be here with Mackie as she starts this, basically her new business, which is her career, and to be, a support to her in that area. So those are the things. I'm doing things that fill my heart. I'm using my talents for good. I will stay connected where my roots are and start to plant some new seeds. So I'm thrilled, and I look forward to reporting back in and seeing how things go. So
wonderful. Isn't that wonderful?
I know that's a mouthful.
The year, the way the tide has turned this year, and I'm not saying that the growth and the work isn't over. What I'm saying is a new chapter is opening up, is beginning. And so as you're going on this journey here in your residency in New York, I think we're all really excited to see what happens next. So we'll be sure to report back on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for, inviting me to share that. I think, again, I want to be someone who's open to sharing these journeys, and certainly if you find yourself in a position to where you just need someone to talk through some things. I know I've had several people reach out to me, and I definitely want to be, I don't have the answers at all, but I certainly can be
a guide.
Like a guide, or just definitely an empathetic ear.
Yeah. So. Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right, our music moment. Okay, so this is so random. And I want to say right now, Mercury is in retrograde, but it won't be when this airs.
Oh, my goodness. And
it'll just be out, I think. But so, I kind of believe in that stuff. And I know we've talked about this.
Jordan, please put a link to the definition
Mercury
in case retrograde. She acts like she's saying something very common.
Yes, okay.
It's becoming more common, I have to say, though.
It is.
And I wasn't a naysayer for a lot of years until I
all
started
the
paying
things.
attention.
And what it is it says when the planet Mercury is in retrograde, that things with communication here on Earth tend to be wacky.
Yes.
Okay. Things like...
It's not even communication solely.
No, but that's... This time around, that was the specific...
Oh, got it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You might notice these things with communication off.
Mm-hmm.
So we have, travel. Sometimes travel plans are
Technology
interrupted.
issues,
right.
yes.
Things like that. Nothing. We didn't have any of that. And unbeknownst to us, we found out after we curated a beautiful playlist called Enneagram Sessions.
Mm-hmm.
for this particular presentation and discussion that we had in Nashville on the boat.
We were so excited.
We were so
during
excited.
discussion and when people were walking in, like we had 4 moments when we could play songs.
Right.
We literally curated. We might have spent a little bit more time on those playlists. And
I've been working on it for weeks. I've been working on that damn playlist. We had 2 different playlists. We had Enneagram sessions, and then we had when to yourself, like when you're needing to write to yourself. Okay.
right.
So the AV guys had clear instructions. Everybody knew the deal. I gave my phone, put it on D&D, like do not disturb, the whole 9 yards. So that, if my mother called or Cooper decided to hit me up in the middle of the presentation, it wouldn't ding. So after we have this wonderful presentation, we've already talked about that. The music went off beautifully. But you and I happened to notice at one point when the music came back on audibly that there was music that we had not chosen being played in the room. We love it.
We love it. It was one of our favorite songs, but it was in our Spotify. We didn't add it. So for those of you on Spotify, you know exactly what we're talking about. When your playlist or when an album runs out, Spotify, if you keep your music on, Spotify is just going to pick songs for you.
Right.
Either songs that they know you like or that they think you should like based on the algorithm. Well, I remember we were
know each other so well.
We know each other so well. I was like, why are you playing that song?
When I was thinking the same thing. Wow.
I was like, wow, that's emotional. Like, wow,
she put this one in here. Whew. It's an emotional song, and it's fine because that's what people are going to do. They're going in, deeper and writing intentions for themselves. But man, I mean, like I was thinking, she went for the jugular on this one. And so, come to find out, our sweet AV boys, who were so nice, and they were all men, didn't stop the music during the recording. So the minute people start entering in the room and the video is recording, it's also playing our music. So Danelle and I's mouths are moving while we're speaking on the stage in the video, but it's just like Brandi Carlile or like other music. Like,
playing over us.
Just playing.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
We're going to have to come up with something.
Oh, right. Which is why we ran out of music. So anyway, it's just funny. That's the kind of stuff
that happens.
We talk about music all the time. We talk to you about it all the time, and then it took over. It's like music took over the whole damn session, our presentation.
But no one knows it.
No.
But they were really going to share that recording with other people because they're so, the association was proud of that session. So we're going to have to do something to make sure that maybe we're just going to have to re-record the thing.
Yeah, I mean, we can share this episode.
Well, we can share the episodes, but they want the content.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. And we're going to share the content with everybody. We're going to put, Danelle mentioned it earlier, we're going to share our presentation on selfsmarterpodcast.com so you can get it there. But it's just so funny. Like we celebrate music all the time. We talk about it as therapy, and then it takes over our damn presentation. It's just, it's just funny is what it is.
Absolutely.
Well, I've had a great time today in New York with you to kick off your residency. I can't believe it.
Yes.
And we will be back.
Yes.
I'll be back we're going to be recording from New York.
Multiple times. Yeah, we're looking forward to having some guests, and who knows who we might have in our New York studio.
I know.
Yeah, who knows?
I know. But our listeners, thank you so much for coming back this week, and thank you for helping me welcome Danelle to New York and into her residency here. And just hang with us. We've got some fun stuff coming up this fall and into the winter months. So maybe Danelle will be recording when it's snowing outside, and
that'd be really
she'll
cool.
sing us a tune.
A little holiday tune.
From the podcast. All right. Until next time, please remember everything is in the show notes on the website.
Absolutely.
So go take a look. And until then, we'll send you into the week with grateful hearts.
Goodbye, everyone.
As always, you can connect with us on Instagram and Facebook at Self Smarter Podcasts. You can also leave a rating or review if you enjoyed what you heard today. Not only does this mean so much to us, but it also helps other leaders and future leaders find our community. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us in becoming self-smarter. This podcast is produced by Snacks Media, and music is from a free platform. Well, that is until Brandi Carlile reaches out to us to write the original score for our podcast. Friends, have a great rest of your day.